Hello there. If you like these debate reviews, why don't you check me out in an actual debate? This Saturday, I'm going to be debating a leftist named Spaceman Z, or at least I'm assuming that's how his name is pronounced, because the alternative would be that it's Spacemans. If it's the latter, then that's a pretty dumb sounding name. So I'm going to assume that his name is pronounced according to Dragon Ball Z rules. The debate's going to be moderated by PPP. If your reaction to this is, who are these people, then what do you expect of me? BreadTube's not going to show up to a debate unless they're going to make a lot of money. While nobody involved is going to be making any fat cash off this debate, I guarantee you're going to be getting high quality entertainment without interruptions from super chats or advertisements or other boring shit. At 12 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, I'm going to post a video on my channel telling you where to go to watch the debate. Right now, the plan is to start the debate at 3 p.m. Eastern, so definitely check that out.
The term white fragility was more or less coined by Robin DiAngelo, a liberal huckster who wants to profit off the pain and suffering of marginalized people to sell a book pretending that a real and viable way to combat the unconscionable racial disparities still present in our country is to hire more HR reps to discipline white people who say racist jokes.
Okay, I guess.
Possibly the only thing sadder than this book's success and notoriety is the absolute meltdown that conservatives are having over it because it's entitled insinuated that they might not be as tough as they think they are. A reaction so poetic and beautiful that I'd pay to see it in theaters, if not for the fact that we can't go to theaters anymore because of a virus that's disproportionately killing people of color due to racist housing and wealth distribution policies that we never got around to fixing.
There's no official government wealth distribution policy. The United States government does not divide wealth. It also doesn't decide how much people get paid. I mean, it does decide for its own employees, but that's about it. The government doesn't decide which houses that we live in. All of these things are handled by the market. If you assume that in any society where a free market exists, that every single demographic group is going to have the same outcomes, then you're a moron. You need to read Thomas Sowell. Homogeneous outcomes are only going to happen when you have homogeneous people. For a point of comparison, let's consider ethnic Chinese people to be the blacks of Malaysia. Ethnic Chinese people make up a small but significant percentage of the population of Malaysia. Despite this, the Chinese minority experiences a radically different economic outcome. Only it's reversed from how it works in the United States. The Chinese minority routinely outperforms the Malaysian majority. Malaysians respond to this disparity with baseless conspiracy theories. The Chinese Malaysians are nothing but rootless grifters who cheat to get ahead. They're part of some international conspiracy to colonize Malaysia. The reality, though, is that their culture is just different. Assuming that two separate cultures would end up with the same economic outcomes is foolish. Likewise, it's foolish to look at economic disparity between groups and assume that it must be the result of racist policies. Or do you believe that the Malaysian government props up the minority Chinese population through racist policies? What about certain successful ethnic groups in America?
Because the discourse around this book is garbage, and I didn't write it in the first place, this will be the last time I mention DiAngelo's book in my opening statement or in the debate as a whole. Instead, I'm going to talk about slavery. Not historical plantation slavery, but like modern day slavery. Quick aside, they're still slaves. Did you know that? So like today, right now, as you're watching or listening to this, slaves still make a lot of stuff in places like Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Uganda, the Philippines, and even Russia that then get bought by people here in the West. If you drink coffee with sugar while looking at your cell phone before putting on your clothes in the morning, you've almost certainly bought something that came into your hands by way of modern slavery.
Okay.
Given that, we can make a few assumptions. So you probably don't wish active harm on these people, on these victims of slavery, and you'd much prefer to see them, not be slaves. You were born into a country with an economic system that makes avoiding these products very difficult, beyond what a reasonable person could be expected to know and do. And you almost certainly had no direct say in the policies and trade agreements that would allow this modern slavery to continue.
So end globalism? We're barely into this debate and it seems like the most what the fuck thing that I've ever watched. Milo's famous for working at Breitbart, right? He worked for Steve Bannon. Isn't Steve Bannon considered to be the arch anti-globalist? I assume Milo would support less globalism? Am I missing something here?
However, we can also state a few facts. The reason you are not one of these slaves is due to factors beyond your control, and not in any reasonable sense due to the virtue of your personal decisions. The reason these people are slaves is in huge part thanks to factors beyond their control, and not in any reasonable sense due to the lack of virtue in their own decisions.
Wait a minute. Are you addressing Milo personally or Western people in general? If it's the latter, this makes no sense. So you're saying that a Chinese worker who manufactures iPhone components is a slave, yet an American McDonald's worker who serves people fries and hamburgers is somehow not a slave?
What better place to start than the guiding principles of the country you likely live in? The greatest goddamn country on earth, the United States of America. Freedom and meritocracy. In America, you decide your own fate and succeed or fail on your own merits, with the assurance that no matter where you end up, you got there by clawing by your own two hands. Which would mean, yeah, it is your fault. You chose to buy the coffee and sugar and shirt that some kid halfway across the world was forced into making. If you didn't know about it, that's also your fault. Nothing was stopping you from doing the tiny amount of research it would have taken for you to find out. And ask yourself, does a good person buy things made with the blood of slave labor?
Do you have any data to back this up? Coffee beans are an agricultural product. What evidence do you have that the people working at coffee plantations are slaves? Are you just making assumptions because coffee plantations happen to be located in tropical regions? Wouldn't that make you the racist?
To paraphrase a segment from the excellent Cody Johnston,
You f***ing sheep. And then there are the sheepdogs, here to protect the sheep. Even if the sheep are a little peeved because the sheepdog has this weird tendency to murder non-white sheep and then claim they were wolves, often by accusing the sheep of smoking sheep weed, as if that justifies it.
research has shown that there are two primary factors contributing to the denial of systemic racism. The first is simple ignorance of historical reality. If you are unaware of the vast but straightforward through line of slavery then to racial gaps now, you're likely to use the default cultural norms of meritocracy we have in the United States to generate a post hoc rationalization for racial disparities. We're a just society. People are in control of their own lives, and so people deserve what they have.
If you want to argue that blacks aren't at all responsible for their own poor economic outcomes, then fine. While I certainly don't agree with that, I would agree that slavery and segregation did hold black people back somewhat. However, none of this proves that our modern day police departments are racist.
The second factor is the harder one. Positive white racial identity, the extent to which you like being white. People who are proud of being white are way more likely to reject historical and empirical truths, proving systemic racism, not because of any rational objections, but because admitting that a group they identify with has done something morally wrong would be a threat to their positive group identity.
Who are these people you're talking about that are proud of being white? To be white is to be a member of a pariah race. It's why so many whites pretend to be other races. Nobody pretends to be white. Whites aren't even allowed to write books where the main protagonists are Hispanic immigrants. Only a racist piece of shit would write something like that. The people who do proclaim pride in being white get cast out of our society. They're forced to e-beg on the internet for scraps as social outcasts.
A few moments later.
Isn't a binary on or off switch that automatically pegs you as a good or bad person. You get to realize that it's just cultural inertia that keeps system of inequality going rather than evil racist conservatives or incompetent detached liberals. And you get to realize that while you aren't personally responsible for building this unjust system, you can be a voice in the collective push to change it.
Is he finally done talking?
before I go on and start being mean, I do first of all want to pay tribute to the fact that you're here at all, because it can be very difficult these days for me especially to speak to anybody. They tend to get browbeaten by their own fans, which is a very depressing and ghastly thing to submit yourself to. But
I find it hard to believe that Milo can't find debate partners. If there's an opportunity out there to make money, you better believe that BreadTube will flock to it like flies on horseshit.
And you gave us in your opening a very well structured, well organized, passionate, and in some ways quite persuasive opening.
It absolutely was none of those things.
The structural racism that Robin DiAngelo is talking about is a little bit different, and well, let me start at the beginning, and let me start at the beginning of what I want to talk about with that, and then we'll get to you at the end. Now,
is Milo pretending to read the book while he's debating? This is the weirdest debate I've watched.
A few moments later.
That there's simply no basis on which to punish people living today for. It's crackers. So it may surprise you to learn I have, in fact, some sympathy with the call for reparations. I would like to see the money very specifically and carefully spent, and hope that it does some good, because I understand, I believe, I recognize that there are some legacies there.
Just stop talking, Milo. This debate intro has gone on way too long. It's like Milo has nothing left to talk about, and so he just panics and starts conceding things. You don't win a debate against some unhinged moron by making sure you talk as long as he did.
And like I said, there are studies here that say that. Hold on, I'm not done. Whoa, come on. I'm not done making my point, because I'm pretty sure that you didn't listen or understand the point here. So we justify power structures. We tend to have more. We give post hoc rationalizations for why people are in the places they are. And this is true, we don't like information that might harm our self-image. If you want to call that something other than white fragility, that's fine, but that's essentially what it is. It's bog standard psychology. It's not questioned in the field, and it's not an impugning on anybody's moral character like people seem to think it is.
It also doesn't prove shit. You saying that white people are psychologically inclined to dismiss claims of systemic racism doesn't prove those claims are true. Again, you're making an empirical argument, so stop rationalizing and provide evidence.
You can attempt to be patronizing if you like, but I think what is quite crystal clear from listening to you is that you went on a long and somewhat persuasive diversion about slavery and its legacy, but you haven't really defended the thing you're here to defend.
Do you know what an analogy is? So the concept
you want to try that again, have a real conversation? Do you know what an analogy is? I mean, come on.
So no. What do you think the purpose of bringing up the modern global slavery? What do you think the purpose of that was?
I'm not asking you to speak to me like a school teacher rearranging her charge crayons.
I could be a terrible. No, I had intent there.
Is it okay to interrupt now? Your rules, not mine.
Sorry, buddy. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Your rules, not mine. I'm attempting to be polite. I'm attempting to engage with you. I threw out most of my opening because you haven't respected the debate questions.
I think I'm starting to understand the dynamics of this debate. Bojangles is your typical condescending SJW asshole. Milo is trying to portray himself as this open-minded intellectual conservative and hopes to bait this guy into looking stupid. This is the sort of troll strategy that Milo is known for.
Like if someone comes up to you and says, "You're contributing to slavery, you're a terrible person," you're probably going to be defensive about it. This doesn't seem to be very, controversial. Just like white fragility, if you say that, come up to a white person and say, "Hey, you're contributing to the, propagation of a white supremacist system," they're probably not going to listen to you very much.
This is not evidence of systemic racism. For the love of God, stop rationalizing. Just stop it.
Why do you think that is? Hold on. Why do you think that is? Why do you think, and if we zoom out and look at the system, why do you think that white people are doing better than black people?
It's not like they're narcissists with an enormous chip on their shoulder. They're not taught to believe that they'll always be the victim of racism and therefore should ignore any criticism of themselves. It's not like many of them believe that it's not worthwhile to invest in themselves.
Where it's married with horrible things that have been done to black people, like moving them all up into these disgusting, depressing, windowless blocks of concrete hell in Chicago.
Whoa, wait a minute. Black people weren't forcibly moved in the shitty apartment buildings. These were public buildings that taxpayers built for them to live in for free. Was it a bad idea to do this? Oh yeah, horrible idea. If housing is limited in a city, I don't have a problem if the city wants to build more apartments to make housing more affordable. What I have a huge problem with though is making those apartments mean-tested welfare benefits. I oppose that because that means if someone living in the apartment gets a job promotion, they could lose their housing. That doesn't help poor people. Instead, it creates an incentive for never-ending poverty. That being said, no coercion existed to force people into public housing. Black people made the choice to enter public housing based on their culture. If this guy wants to denounce the welfare state, go ahead and do it. Because it seems to me that whenever a conservative points these things out, that someone like this guy is always the first one to stand up and defend the status quo. Until you call out the welfare state, you have no right to make these types of arguments.
You said we have reached the point where black people should just behave better.
No, I asked you a question. I said, am I allowed to interrupt you and attempt to summarize your points?
Hold on. Yeah, absolutely. Interrupt me anytime I go on for a while.
So
you think that was a rule that I set?
So the rules. Well, you scolded me for interrupting you, which sort of implied that you didn't.
I guess I'm just stronger than you, and can keep talking.
Wow, he actually said that? Milo trolling this guy is starting to pay in dividends.
Hurt my feelings. I've never heard of you. I don't know who you are. You have no power to hurt my feelings.
Yet here you are.
I showed up prepared to have a serious debate on the subject matter, and you try to do a sort of clever weasel dodge with your.
Well, then get back to talking about the subject.
But it's kind of
talk about the subject. Come on.
Pointless. You don't want to talk about it.
Then get back to talking about the subject. I've asked you like 3 times now.
Let's give Milo
if you can successfully redirect a debate from the topic on hand to the character of the person you're debating, you can score an easy win. I wouldn't say that this is an honorable debate strategy, but it's a good strategy. This is the strategy that Vosh used, for example, when he debated Count Dankula.
If you agree with the underpinning principles, as you seem to, behind the theory of white fragility, then do you also agree that we have a problem with black brittleness or black pugnaciousness? Because you can grow up in the poorest neighborhood in the world, but shouldn't you still know that murder is wrong? And shouldn't you still know that stealing is wrong? And is there any justification in 2020 America for the way that black people behave?
Do you think that they just don't know that murder is wrong?
No, I think they do know, but they do it anyway. And that's precisely my point.
Why would they do that? Why would you do something that's wrong?
Are you seriously this stupid? Black people know that murder is wrong. You don't hear on the news about some black person walking into a grocery store and just killing people. Black murderers usually believe that they're justified in doing what they did. If you're a Bloods gang member and are told someone from a rival gang is greenlit, you believe it's justified for you to kill that person. This is due to cultural, not legal reasoning.
If you look at the Clinton crime bill that destroys the black family, rips dads out from homes for the uselessly, trivially, hysterically stupid sin of having a blunt or having some weed at home. I mean, it's almost unconscionably wicked that we can't, in ways we can't even really fully appreciate. The destruction of the black family at just the moment in history when it looked like Black America was taking a really positive turn upwards was done by the left.
Milo has no idea what he's talking about here. The Clinton crime bill was never used to sentence people to long terms in prison for smoking a joint. That's just straight up not true. I challenge everyone to find me an example of one single person who served a lengthy term in federal prison under the Clinton crime bill because of one marijuana cigarette.
How dumb would you have to be to have your solution to this problem be, well, the individual should just make better choices?
A fair point criticizing the status quo. Still proves absolutely nothing, though, in regards to systemic racism.
A lot of people still deny systemic racism, and systemic racism are the things that you're talking about, right? All those factors that were out of their control. mostly due to white people, because white people just have historically been in charge. So why do you think a bunch of white people, because we are talking about white fragility, deny the existence of systemic racism and just expect individual black people to overcome their circumstances?
You still haven't provided even one piece of evidence showing that the criminal justice system or any other institution in society is systemically racist. Arguing that white people could be susceptible to systemic racism is not an excuse for your lack of actual evidence that this is the case.
But the question was, why do you think they deny systemic racism?
Because it's not real? You still have provided nothing.
No, I mean, maybe you've seen other conservatives recently who show up and kind of machine gun people and talk over them. Well, that's not my style. So if you came prepared to win on those grounds, I mean, I'm sorry, you got the wrong guy. I prefer to have a civilized discussion. If you don't want to do that and you insist on these behaviors that disrupt and destroy any...
Did you see him waving his hand around? Like what Milo says just doesn't matter? Why are you debating him then? This is yet another example of Bojangles acting like a jackass. Milo is trolling him and he's completely oblivious.
All right. What I would like you to do is commit to dropping the fucking snark, because it's not making you look good and it's not helping us discussion get anywhere. So drop the attitude, drop the bad behaviors, and treat me as I have treated you, because otherwise there's just no point in being here. I got things to do. It's a lovely sunny day. I can skip down the beach and have a nice day. This is not worth my time if you're not going to have a respectful discussion, and you have oozed disrespect from the opening seconds of this discussion. If you are prepared to cut that shit out, I'm prepared to continue. The ball is in your court.
Do you remember the question?
All right, I guess the answer is no.
Milo just owned this guy. He made no points. He did no research. I'm not sure whether or not he even read the book. Bojangles just looks like a complete asshole at this point. This is one of the strangest debates that I've reviewed.
Black culture has been on a steady crash down to the seventh circle of hell, talking about, money, drugs, sex, prostitution. And you wonder, how much worse can it get? How much more unhealthy and self-destructive can the behaviors that Black popular culture is encouraging people to participate in, how much worse can they possibly get? And then they do. Then Cardi B shows up. It's probably all of those things.
That was a pretty amazingly base description of what I would say is the real cause of Black strife. Ever since the Black Power movement, Black culture has become absolutely toxic. It's completely destroyed the Black family.
Wallowing in these victimhood narratives obviously isn't working. And the best way to do that is to lean into the one thing Black America does have in common with Republicans, which is the church.
100% agree. Milo is totally correct here. Anyways, like with a lot of these longer debates, I'm gonna divide my review in half. I hope you all enjoy the debate on Saturday, and after that, I'll work on part 2 of this review. My review of the debate so far is that there's been very little of substance provided by either side. It does appear though that Milo is starting to get under the skin of Bojangles. Will Milo succeed in breaking Soyface? Well, we'll just have to find out in part 2 of the review. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video and you're not subscribed to my channel, please support small YouTube channels like mine by subscribing. Thanks.